Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says Nigeria's problem is a lack of upright men in position of authority. APC National Chairman Adams Oshiomhole says as the boss of the party and every member of the party's National Working Committee must take orders from him. In international news, U.S. reopens its Mexico border it has closed to migrants who tried to storm it. And in sport, FIFA considers proposal for staging World Cup every 2 years.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says Nigeria's main problem is rooted in a lack of upright men in positions of authority, not ethnicity, tribalism or religion. He said the country's main problem is finding forthright men in positions of authority. The professor was speaking in Enugu during a book launch by former governor of the state, Sullivan Chime. Osinbajo then called on political office holders to discharge their responsibilities for good conscience. He said Nigeria would be a much better place if politicians would think of what the future would hold for their people, not than to win their next election. Kano State Governor Abdullahi Ganduje says the priority of the All Progressives Congress at this time should be on how to win the forthcoming elections, not on how to sack the party's national chairman, Adams Oshiomhole. He was speaking at the state's APC stakeholders meeting in Kano on Saturday. The governors also said this calls by aggrieved members of the party to sack the national chairman would only lead to crisis in the party. He said the party does not need crisis at this time, but strategy on how to be victorious in the next election. He then called for tolerance within the party. The governor said partisanship without tolerance is both harmful and anti-progress. Meanwhile, APC National Chairman Adams Oshiomhole says as the boss of the party and every member of the party's National Working Committee must take orders from him. This in response to an internal memo addressed to him by the party's legal advisor, Babatunde Ogala, in which he accused Oshiomhole of usurping his office. He complained that Oshiomhole always sidelined the legal department in matters that it should handle. Oshiomhole says the party's constitution states that he is the chief executive officer of the APC. He said this issue is a distraction and that his eye is on the ball to protect the corporate interests of the party. Senator Godswill Akpabio says he did not defect to the All Progressives Congress. He only moved to the party in the nation's interest. The senator and former governor of Akwa Ibom State says he moved because those who founded the party, APC, were the same ones that are determined to pull it down. He said those people are trying to pull down the Buhari government for self-interest as elections draw near. He expressed concern about those he described as politicians who only think about next election and not the next generations. Akpabio said he moved in the interest of the nation to stabilize the polity and to support the current administration. He expressed confidence in the next election, saying there would be no war in the country. The Nigerian police has paraded 33 suspected IPOB members arrested in connection with the killing of a police officer and others during the protest in Nnewi, Anambra State last week. First Public Relations Officer Jimoh Moshood said in Awka on Sunday that Inspector General of Police Ibrahim Idris has directed the force to urgently recover the weapons the suspected IPOB members snatched from the slain officer. To this charge of killing an officer, the suspect shouted loudly in protest. They said they were all traders in Nnewi market who were arrested as a closed shop for the day and were about to leave the market. They said that was long after the IPOB protesters had left the market. They claimed to have been arrested for a crime they had not committed. Moshood said the arrested suspects ranging in age between 17 and 65 years with state origins in the southeastern Delta were accused of engaging in terrorism despite the proscription of the group last year. He said a thorough investigation would be conducted and anyone found culpable would be charged for terrorism. Boko Haram gunmen are being suspected in the kidnapping of 15 girls in a village near Tumor in southeastern Niger near the Nigerian border. News Agency of Nigeria reports the mayor of the town in Niger's Difa region said at least 15 unidentified armed men seized the girls about 9 kilometers from the center of the town. Meanwhile, Boko Haram fighters killed 8 workers on Thursday at a French drilling company in the same town of Tumor. Boko Haram has been waging an insurrection since 2009 aimed at establishing an Islamic state in northeastern Nigeria. It has launched repeated attacks into neighboring Niger, Chad and Cameroon. The violence has claimed thousands of civilian lives and forced millions to flee their homes in the Lake Chad Basin region. A suspected kidnapper has been killed and another arrested in Agbowa, Ikorodu area of Lagos State. There was an exchange of gunfire between police and members of the kidnapping syndicate before two of the suspects escaped with gunshot wounds. Police spokesperson Chike Otis said the two suspects were part of a kidnapping ring that has been terrorizing some parts of Lagos State, particularly Ikorodu. He said there were earlier reports of some kidnappings in which the suspects demanded between $500,000 and 25 million naira. The police raided the kidnappers' hideout after they were coerced into releasing two of their victims. Otis said efforts are ongoing to arrest those on the run. He said the suspects in custody had confessed the crime and would be charged. Coming up, a run through Africa, Zimbabwe's former president Robert Mugabe is said to be unable to work, and later, U.S. seals its border with Mexico as migrants rushed towards it. Stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
This used to be me. But that was before I got the perfect bag. It's handy and easy to use. All I need in one compact space, just like my MTN Extra Value plan. I used to get one plan for my calls and then try to remember which data plan worked for me. Roaming was a totally different ballgame. Not anymore. I've got the MTN Extra Value all-in-one plan. If you're a data buff like me, you get extra data with some talk time. And if you like to make calls, you get extra talk time with some data. And when I'm abroad, I automatically browse, chat, and call right on the same plan. MTN Extra Value was made just for me.
More of data or calls, whichever one you prefer. MTN Extra Value is made just for you.
Shining our eyes on breaking news, whether in the east or in the west, with Al-Shabaab in Somalia and Boko Haram in Nigeria, with turbulence in the north and agitation in the south. Wherever you live in Nigeria, wherever news happens in Africa, we've got it covered. ANN News, connecting Africans in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Let's take a quick look at stories making news around Africa. Tragedy in Uganda over the weekend as more than 24 persons died in a ferry accident on Lake Victoria close to the capital, Kampala. Police say the vessel was carrying at least 100 persons partying on a cruise ferry when the vessel sank on Saturday. Local media reports say some well-known individuals were on the ferry. Police officials have told a foreign news agency that the boat was overloaded and that it was bad weather at the time. Police say more than 20 persons have been rescued, but many are still missing. Some of the lucky ones that have been rescued include a prince from Uganda's largest traditional kingdom of Buganda and musical artist Irene Namburi. Many of those on board are said to have had no life jackets, and two small fishing boats that had tried to help in rescue efforts were also reported to have been overloaded. They sank as well. Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa has reported over the weekend that 94-year-old former President Robert Mugabe is ill and can no longer walk. He also said Mugabe has been receiving treatment in Singapore for 2 months now for an undisclosed illness. Mnangagwa said despite Mugabe's inability to walk, he was feeling better and should return to Zimbabwe within a week. Former President Mugabe has led Zimbabwe during its fight for independence and became its prime minister once that was achieved. He later became president until his ouster by the army a year ago after 37 years in power. Mnangagwa has promised state assistance to the former president in restoring his health. The government is also reported to be paying for Mugabe's medical bills. Mnangagwa said the government is caring for Mugabe because he's the founding father of the nation of Zimbabwe. Kenya is hosting on Monday in Nairobi the first ever Sustainable Blue Conference that would focus on the environment. Close to 24 world leaders are attending the conference, which is receiving global support because of its environmental focus. Many environmentally oriented civil society organizations are also attending. This event is happening on 3 continents: Africa, Asia, and North America. Canada and Japan are co-hosting the event, and more than 17,000 persons from more than 180 countries are taking part in the conference. World bodies are also participating, including the African Union, United Nations organs, the Commonwealth, the World Wildlife Fund, International Maritime Organization, the World Bank, Afrexim Bank, and many others. Sustainable Blue Economy is a marine-based economy that provides social and economic benefits for current and future generations and is based on clean technologies, renewable energy, and circular material flows. Clinical trials of 4 experimental Ebola treatments have been approved by Congolese authorities. Health Ministry officials say this would allow researchers to gather data on their effectiveness. Congolese health workers have already administered therapeutic treatment to more than 150 Ebola patients since August. In an effort to contain the worst of DRC's 10 outbreaks of the hemorrhagic fever since 1976, until now, doctors have decided on a case-by-case basis which treatments to administer. Now, in the clinical trials, they would apply random treatment. The ministry says treatment will still be free. The Catholic Church have joined the electoral fray on Sunday as the Democratic Republic of Congo gets up for next month's watershed presidential election to choose a successor to veteran leader Joseph Kabila. Addressing several thousands attending Mass, the new Archbishop of Kinshasa, Fridolin Ambongo, has made a spirited appeal to what he called the patriotic conscience. The Congolese people not to give in to provocation or verbal violence during the presidential campaign. Instead, he called for national unity. Archbishop Ambongo succeeded Laurent Muzangwa 3 weeks ago. He urged his congregation at an open-air mass not to allow discrimination in any form, ethnic or political, to cloud their judgment during the election. Chad and Israel have re-established ties for the first time after they were severed in the early 1970s. This took place during Chadian President Idris Deby's official visit to Israel on Sunday. No Chadian president had officially visited Israel in almost 50 years. Deby and Netanyahu are expected to discuss security issues and Israel's continued help in the fight against northern rebels. Netanyahu said Chad is important to Israel and that he is delighted they are resuming the friendship between the two countries. French broadcaster RFI is said to have reported that Chad has said it will not immediately name an ambassador because of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict that is still unresolved. An Egyptian court has upheld death sentences for 9 persons convicted of the murder of a top prosecutor in a CAR bombing 3 years ago. Hisham Barakat was killed in June 2015 when a bomb struck his convoy in Cairo after jihadists called for attacks on the judiciary to avenge a crackdown on Islamists. 2 years later, an Egyptian criminal court sentenced 28 persons to death for their involvement in his murder. Only 15 defendants were present in court for the verdict at the time. On Sunday, Egypt's Court of Cassation confirmed the death sentence for 9 of the 15 on Sunday and reduced the sentences of the 6 others to life imprisonment. No one claimed the attack against Barakat, but authorities pointed the finger at members of the outlawed Muslim Brotherhood of ousted President Mohamed Morsi. Since Morsi's 2013 military overthrow, Egypt has struggled to quell jihadists' insurgency and crack down on Islamic combatants. When we return, U.S. reopens its Mexico border it has closed to migrants who tried to storm it. And later sport, FIFA considers proposal for staging World Cup every 2 years.
You are watching ANN.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Adam, go and bring us your husband. Okay, hello baby.
We're in this together, okay? Can you hear me? Keep coming forward.
Wait, stop.
You okay, lean to your right. Keep walking down. Keep walking to the left. Yes.
You're almost here.
Keep going.
You are here. Wow, you did it.
I'm just so glad I didn't have to use my cane to do this.
And I am so glad no other man got you before me. Let me be your eyes.
We will never stop working to give you a network you can rely on so you can enjoy life's special moments. MTN, everywhere you go.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow the story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News and International News. U.S. authorities shut the country's busiest border crossing and fired tear gas into Mexico on Sunday to repel Central American migrants approaching the border after U.S. President Donald Trump vowed the asylum seekers would not easily enter the country. Traffic in both directions was suspended for several hours at the San Ysidro port of entry between San Diego and Tijuana. Tensions on the border had been rising in recent days, with thousands of Central American migrants who arrived in a caravan camped out in the sports stadium in Tijuana. On Sunday, Mexican police broke up the latest in a series of daily protests, triggering a rush towards the U.S. border. U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers stopped the migrants with tear gas as U.S. and Mexican government helicopters hovered overhead. British Prime Minister Theresa May is jubilant as European Union leaders formally agreed on a Brexit deal on Sunday. They have urged Britons to back Prime Minister Theresa May's package that faces furious opposition in the British Parliament. The 27 EU leaders took barely half an hour at the summit in Brussels to rubber stamp a 600-page treaty. In it are the terms of Britain's withdrawal from the EU on March the 29th next year. There is also a 26-page declaration outlining a future free trading relationship. May joined them shortly after the brief meeting to seal the deal. She now faces a struggle to get the deal through a deeply divided British Parliament. Both Eurosceptics and EU supporters alike are angered by the terms of the deal.
The Council invited the Commission, the European Parliament and the Council to take the necessary steps to ensure that the agreement can enter into force on the 30th of March 2019, so as to provide for an orderly withdrawal. The European Council approved the political declaration setting out the framework for the future relationship between the European Union and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
Russia has seized 3 Ukrainian naval ships off the coast of Crimea after opening fire on them and wounding several sailors, a move that risks igniting a dangerous new crisis between the two countries. Crimea was annexed by Russia in March 2014. A Russian news agency said the country's FSB security service had accused the Ukrainian vessel of dangerous behavior in Russian waters, so it had to use weapons to force them to stop. FSB was quoted as saying he had been forced to act because Ukrainian vessels were using weapons. The FSB statement also said Russia had seized all 3 Ukrainian naval vessels in the Russian Federation's territorial waters in the Black Sea. Deputy Russian UN Ambassador Dmitry Polyansky says his country had requested the United Nations Security Council to discuss the developments. But that is just a dangerous development in that region. They don't need another conflict there. The United Arab Emirates has freed 31-year-old British scholar Matthew Hedges, who was sentenced to life in prison last week, allegedly for spying. He was set free on Monday after receiving a presidential pardon along with more than 700 persons. Hedges' wife, Daniela, said on Twitter the pardon was the best news the family had received. Chinese state media has continued to pressure Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen on Monday. Her ruling pro-independence party suffered heavy defeat at local elections over the weekend. Her party officials are now busy analyzing what went wrong. Tsai, who faces presidential elections in a little more than a year, resigned on Saturday as chairwoman of the Democratic Progressive Party after losing key battleground cities in mayoral polls to the China-friendly Kuomintang. The DPP now only controls 6 cities and countries to the Kuomintang's 15. Han Kuyi, the Kuomintang's mayor-elect in the southern port city of Kaohsiung and the most high-profile of the party's winners, said he would open the door to contact with China. Beijing has refused to deal with Tsai's administration since she took office in 2016, accusing her of pushing for the island's former independence. China is totally opposed to the idea. It considers Taiwan's island is sacred Chinese territory, and Taiwan practices democracy. Up next, sports. FIFA considers proposal for staging World Cup every 2 years. Stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
If you know fit go internet or follow for Twitter, you know fit snap photo send or get it photo send. Now because you dey use Palasa, your phone no dey answer. See me see wahala. My brother, go get smartphone, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone. Phone wey no go for your hand, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone. Phone wey no fit take selfie. Drop that Palasa phone. No be correct phone, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone.
Upgrade to a smartphone today and get double data for 6 months on any MTN data bundle you buy. Simply purchase a smartphone from any store, anywhere in Nigeria, or bring your current smartphone from any network. Insert your MTN SIM card to start enjoying your double data bonus. Offer is open to all new and existing MTN subscribers. Join the largest smartphone movement today.
Make it not for your hand,
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit.
Shining our eyes on breaking news, whether in the east or in the west, with Al-Shabaab in Somalia and Boko Haram in Nigeria, with turbulence in the north and agitation in the south. Wherever you live in Nigeria, wherever news happens in Africa, we've got it covered. ANN News, connecting Africans in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News and Sport. FIFA is exploring the possibility of staging the World Cup every 2 years instead of 4. Alejandro Dominguez, president of South American football body CONMEBOL, submitted the proposal at a FIFA Congress in Kigali, Rwanda in October. Dominguez said a biennial World Cup will serve as a viable and even preferable alternative to the expanded continental championships like UEFA Nations League and the Copa America. Getting FIFA to accept this type of proposal will not be easy. Changes to the World Cup, FIFA's biggest events and the world's biggest sporting events, are sure to face opposition. A recent expansion of the quadrennial tournament from its current 32 teams to 48 for the 2026 World Cup provoked fierce protracted opposition before it was approved unanimously last year. Super Falcons forward Cesar Toshola was named Woman of the Match following her sparkling display in the Nigerian ladies' 6-0 win against Equatorial Guinea at the 2018 African Women's Cup of Nations on Saturday. Oshola grabbed a hat-trick in their counter as the Super Falcons booked a place in the semi-finals with a win. The reigning African Women's Footballer of the Year scored Nigeria's 2nd, 3rd and 4th goals in the Group B match at the Cape Coast Sports Stadium. Good for her and so talented. That is NN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on this and other stories, visit our website, tnnafrica.net. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at TNN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatiji. Have a pleasant evening.